What's up guys, it's Anders. Just a couple of quick notes on this video. It's a bit of a saga. So whenever you see this, just know that the reason I put that in there was to cut you having to listen to or watch exactly the same process happen like 10 different times and listen to the same stretch of audio play over and over. But I used the same bit of audio, I used the same bit of reference track each time. It cut about 8 minutes out of the video, which is already super long. Also, if you just wanted to check out the process of a particular one of the match EQs, or you just want to listen to how they all fared against each other, just kind of on autopilot, in the description and in the comments, if I've been good, should be all the tags, so you can just skip to the bit you want, save having to watch through the whole thing. Hope the video is helpful for you two guys, and I will see you on the next one.
Keep it real, I'm independent, I don't need no deal. I'm jaws on the beat, I got flow that kills. Do my thing with a few G's, Lauren Hill.
Okay, so here we are in Logic, and I'm going to test out these match EQs. The ones I've got loaded up are Logic's own match EQ. Ozone 9 has a match EQ module inside it as well, or an individual plugin if you use it advanced. T-Rax 5 from IK Multimedia have master match. FabFilter's ProQ 3 and Tokyo Dawn's SlickEQ M, so the master edition. So those are the 5 that we're going to compare. What I'm just going to go through is show you how to set all of them up and some of the nuances between them. Primarily, what you need for every single one is a reference of some kind for them to take an EQ curve from. If you're familiar with this channel, you'll know my reference track generally is going to be Plastic World from Pendulum. So that is the WAV right there, taken off of the CD. I can't play it on YouTube, so I'll have to cut all audio from that, but that is what I'm using as the reference. And the mix I'm applying to is the radio mix version of the Feeling Heavy tune, which is this. So how do we set these things up? Well, the Logic Match EQ, first things first, needs a sidechain input, and that sidechain input is going to be audio, and the one I've named ref for our reference. The way the Logic Match EQ works, it has to learn the current first, so the thing it's going to be applied to. So we're going to hit learn and play some of the Feeling Heavy track for it to pick up a curve. And generally with these, you're going to keep doing it until you stop seeing any movement. So it's learnt the curve there. So we can turn learn off and see that it's now captured what it needs. Now, in terms of reference, we need to play back the reference track into it now. So I can do it with the audio muted. So we're going to hit learn on reference and apply it. And we've now captured enough of that. So now we want to just hit match to match the two together, and it gives us our blend of the two. So real quick, let's just A/B it and listen to what it did to my mix. As far as I'm concerned, it's butchered my mix. It's given some really high boost. It's taken out all the low end. Now the low end is going to be a bit of a trigger because this track's in a different key. Its kick and sub are in a different position. So if it doesn't get those curves, it just takes everything out. And the way that you fix that in a lot of cases is to use things like smoothing. On the Logic one there, you can just add your own points in. So what I kind of have to do is basically add a point in and kind of get it to behave for me. And that should hopefully be a little bit better. And now we've dialed that back a lot and fixed the low end, it's done a much better job, especially like the lift around 5K, really nice. It helps, it just makes it a little bit brighter and more of like a commercial mix sound. That's how the built-in one in Logic works. It's not too great for having to tweak things like that. There's some tools we'll see as we go through that are much better. Bear in mind it's built into Logic, so it's completely free. And notice how I had to smooth it out as well, like even just dialing it down a little bit, it starts to get really jaggedy. Just want to have that nice and smooth and natural sounding. What we'll do, I'll get them all to something similar to this and we'll A/B them all afterwards as well. So let's have a look at Ozone Match. I did a whole video dedicated to Ozone Match, so I'll remember to link that in the description if you really want to go through all of that. It works in an ever so slightly different process, as in first we're going to capture our reference and then we're going to capture the actual mix. You can't, unfortunately, just send a sidechain to this to get it to work that way, which is a little frustrating. The idea being, I'm guessing, is it's on the master, so you could just send something to it that way. So what we are going to have to do is move our audio across like this, bring our reference in here and do it this way. And as before, I'm going to have to mute it. Okay, so it's captured our reference. We can see that there shows up bright orange and it shows orange on here as well. And now we're going to capture our mix. There we've got our mix. We can see the orange and blue, the difference in between. We've had the same issue with the low end. It's taken a big chunk out. However, Ozone's got this really good tool. It's just kind of hidden over here. I can just drag this along and it's now no longer going to apply it to the low end, which is really nice. Now their smoothing at 50% is actually more like the 70 or 80% smoothing for the Logic EQ. So that's actually really nice. And it's only actually boosted, less than a couple of dB. We've got our dB meter here on the right hand side. So it's not gone up too much. So if we apply it a little harder, so it's perhaps going as much as 3 dB, which was roughly what we did with Logic. Yeah, about 2.5 to 3 dB, somewhere in that sort of range. So push that up even a little bit more. And notice we've got a lot more lift in this case. On Logic's Match EQ, there was some actual cuts. This is like lifting all of the high end. So let's A/B this.
Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground.
And it's done a nice job. It's really lifted up the high end. It's quite transparent and detailed, even though we've got it quite smoothed out. I think we could probably take the smoothing to about 60% here, just to make it a little bit more of an even comparison. So next we've got IK's Master Match, and slightly different way of working again. In this case, we add a reference into the Master Match. Now you can actually add up to 3 references and get a sum of them. That's not something we're going to do in this video because we need to compare them, but it is a feature that's really useful. So you can take tracks, so you can take 3 tracks that you really like the sound of and get the estimation of kind of the middle ground of those as your EQ curve. Super useful feature. So in this instance, we're going to add our reference. I've added the same file and I'm going to take the same part of the song as much as possible to capture my curve off of. And I used like the first drop section just here. So we've now picked up our reference. Now we need to play back the track.
Feeling heavy, but now I'm
And notice how we don't get any feedback on here. When we click Learn Source again, we get our curve. And we can see really what's going on with the low end, why it's trying to take it out of my track here. Now we just click Match and we can see it matching. Now, this has been a lot more subtle than the others, but it's also applied something called level matching. So it's actually going to try and gain it up. We don't want to level match this track because we're going to be comparing them all just for the EQ curves. The spectral matching that we've got here, effectively the push that we had before. So where we're just gaining it up. And you can see the more we push it up, it starts to get more and more detailed. Now this line just here, that's going to be about 5 dB up. So we know we want to take it back to about halfway up that line. So somewhere around there is going to be a similar push. Again, our low end's been affected here, but we can add points into the EQ. We can just add a kind of shelf in here to do some pretty serious tweaking in the low end there to get that even close. But let's roll with it and do our A and B.
feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady.
definitely hasn't pushed the high end as much, even though we've taken it to around the same matching in the loudest points. But it's not done a bad job by any description at all. It still sounds nice and transparent, and we've got a good balance of it. And it's not having to work too hard. In terms of smoothness, I'm not really hearing it, even though it displays that it's got some real accuracy going on. Seems to be all right. One thing I will just throw in, we can actually resize this, make it a little bit larger, or quite a bit larger if you are struggling to work on it. Okay, so ProQ3, this is another one that takes a sidechain. So we can go sidechain, audio, and reference. And down in the analyzer section at the bottom here, we need to switch on EQ match. And now it's asking for our reference. We're going to do an input record for our reference track. Okay, you can see that we've now captured our reference curve, and on the tab here we now need to switch. So now on here we need to save as a reference spectrum. Okay, so once we've saved that, and we're going to call it plastic because I will know what that is, we can then load up plastic as our reference spectrum, and we can go over to match. So now when we play our track back, we can see run audio through the plugin to use the input signal, so match EQ can compare it to the loaded reference spectrum. So let's watch what happens. And we're suffering the same problems with the low end, so we can take that entire thing away, and now we've got a bit more of a low end balance, right?
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground.
Before we limited to sort of 2.5 dB and change overall, so we can dial these down so they're a lot more subtle. Now it's a lot more subtle. We've got something a lot more acceptable. We've got this huge dip off in the high end, but we're going to stick with that because that's what it's done.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground.
It's actually not delivering a terrible result now, but it's taken us a lot more work to get there, and it's done a very strange number of sharp EQs, really trying to get those particular frequencies adjusted to match exactly that EQ curve. And last but not least, we've got Tokyo Dawn Labs SlickEQ M. Works a little bit different to all of the others. So we can go into Smart Ops just here. What we then need to do is get a reference track. So we have to load it up, or we can use like pink noise, or you can actually do from a plugin instance. And that's what we're going to do just here. So the way I'm going to do that is to put another version of SlickEQ on our reference, like so. We're going to go Smart Ops, and we're going to go Learn, and we're going to tell it to learn our reference track here. Okay, so that one has now learned a version of that for us. When we go back over to our original, which is applied to the mix, and go Reference from plugin instance Ref1, and that's now got our reference in there. We now need to learn our mix track, so we're going to hit Learn in here and play that back.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm
So now we've got the two. We've got our reference and we've got our input. Now we have to do an operation. And what we're going to do here is match to the reference. And there is the curve it gives us. We can also do a high pass and low pass in there. And that gives us an actual copy of the curves based on the high pass and low pass of the reference track. So let's apply that. And this is the curve it gives us. Now our low end slope again, it's dropped that off quite significantly, but we're going to zero that out. Otherwise, with the exception of this gain 2 here around the 300 Hertz region, nothing's cutting above 3 dB. So it's been pretty subtle in that respect. So let's A and B this guy.
feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up, I'm hitting the ground.
Honestly, that's probably the most subtle one. It's barely given a high-end boost or lift at all, and you can actually hear the cuts happening quite a bit here. I'd probably reduce those down. But all in all, it's again done a good job. It's topped and tailed it nicely. It solidifies it a bit, but it hasn't made it that bright commercial sound, despite the fact we use the same reference. So I think the big question now is, if we were to go through all of these one after the other, which one's going to sound best. I think what we'll do is we will have a naked track, so one without any plugins active. So we'll play the naked track with no plugins on it first. Then we'll dip into each one. And if we think it's an improvement, we'll put that through to the next round until we can figure out what doing this very quick test has given us the best results.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground.
Okay, so from that, I would take the Ozone, the IK, and the Tokyo Dawn in that order. Getting rid of Logic's one, and ProQ 3 just didn't do well in this instance. And I think Ozone brings out loads of detail. It might be a little bit bright, but let's just compare these three.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground.
Okay, so Ozone definitely brings out the best detail in it. IK and Tokyo Dawn are dead similar in what they've done.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now.
But doing that, I can hear that IK is definitely a little bit nicer with what it's done. It's just lifted that top end up a little bit. Now, Ozone's definitely a touch too bright, but we can just very simply tailor that back, bring it back to like 25%. That's probably going to be really in the right ballpark.
Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting the ground. Feeling heavy, and now I'm steady. Going up and hitting.
I think that's done a really good job. I do think it's actually the best match EQ option as well, just for these filters right here, just to be able to switch it off, especially when the low end like that doesn't work, because it's a different note. Just drag that out and it just doesn't pay attention anymore. Like whereas IK's done a really great job, it's IK did a great job. It was still super fiddly in what we had to do with it, and then yeah, getting it to match wasn't great either. Whereas yeah, Ozone has done a superb job. It is lifting it up quite a bit more overall, but then for how quick and easy it was to match, and then the fact that it's in Ozone, you can do so much more inside it. If you compare these all side by side, it's kind of like a price value. Ozone 9 is like $250 to buy. But it comes with a whole suite of mastering plugins. So value there wise, like you'd pay $50 probably for like one of each. So as a bundle, you're saving big time. IK Master Match is $99 alone. Tokyo Dawn is $50 alone. Logic free, it's built in. It did an alright job with some like tweaking and like paying more attention to what the Logic one actually did, and then applying that to your mix would be probably the best way to go, like the best learning curve without having to spend anything. And ProQ 3, it didn't perform great in this task, but it is by far one of the best EQs you can buy. But similarly, it comes out as nearly the full price of Ozone alone just for the EQ. So I think best match EQ option we've got here is Ozone 9, and it comes out at potentially the best value as well, as long as you're going to make use of all the other features inside it. I hope that video was helpful for you guys. It took forever to record, and I will see you on the
I'm
next one.
independent, I don't need no deal. I'm jaws on the beat, I got flow that kills. Do my ting with a few G's, Lauren Hill.